previous time in the White House, Trump had a hardline approach with Iran. And now that Iran has its own domestic issues, how might it shape their relations?
Well, Trump had a hardline approach only to the extent of revoking a 2016 nuclear deal. Trump had a hardline approach only to the extent of assassinating the Iranian general Soleimani in Iraq when he was going towards to the airport in Baghdad. But he did not initiate a war. But certainly, so far as his rhetoric is concerned, he didn't want that the economic sanctions should not be lifted on Iran. He wanted to squeeze Iran and bring it on the terms and conditions that basically behind the scene Israel was laying down. Because Israel feels that if Iran becomes a nuclear power, that means Israel's security would be under threat. And you may recall that in 1984, Israel carried out attack on the Iraq's nuclear installation. It was destroyed because Israel doesn't want any other Muslim country, including Pakistan, to stay as a nuclear power. Netanyahu is on the record, and many other Zionist leaders have been on the record, that the way Donald Trump has supported the Jewish cause, so-called Jewish cause, I would call it a Zionist cause, no other president ever, US president ever supported in that manner. So I think, again, this hardliner approach of the US president, the new US president-elect, would be, is not something, you will see it in his rhetoric, but I think practically I don't see any American attack happening on Iran. That's not going to happen, because he's going to wind down all these wars. He will, at one point of time, he would pressurize softly to the Netanyahu to close down this war. But again, I don't expect that the Palestinians would get any concessions. I don't expect that Donald Trump do anything to go for a two-state solution. Something Joe Biden was saying that they want a two-state solution. But at the same time, when the two-state solutions resolutions were moved inside the UN Security Council, the US administration under Biden opposed it. Essentially, Joe Biden administration have institutionalized the hypocrisy in their foreign policy. In case of Donald Trump, he's a more straightforward, a more blunt, impulsive, but I don't see him as hypocrite as the Democrats have been. So I think by and large, it is in the interest of the world, in the Middle East, in the long run, and elsewhere in the world in the long run, that Donald Trump is there as a president, because his focus is going to be inside the USA, where he wants to be, basically, he's giving more and more tax concession to the businessman. He wants to basically, he wants to basically increase the growth rate. And he's the reason he's been saying time and again that he wants to wind down these wars, because a lot of money is being spent on this war. A lot of unnecessary focus of the American is there. And then Donald Trump's victory is basically victory of the Putin's narrative against the Europe, something I earlier on pointed out. So there is a kind of a seismic shift in the US foreign policy that is going to take place under his presidency. But when it comes to Middle East, that is where the Zionist network is very active, and that is where his policy is not very going to different. That is where the two-state solution that everybody in the world wants, I think that is again in jeopardy. And that would mean more violence. That would mean more enemies for Israel. That means that if not sooner, maybe in the long run, maybe later, there would be more similar attack like that of October 7 onto the apartheid state. Because as long as Israel is not willing to provide and give right to the Palestinian, this cycle of violence in the Middle East would continue in one way or the other.
Now, Jawed, you've underlined the Russian and Ukrainian conflict, but I want to talk about China now. Emerging geopolitical challenges such as the Chinese influence in the Middle East is perhaps a threat to the U.S. And Trump seems to have a beef with China. Even in his speech just half an hour ago, he said that, quote, "We are better than China." What are your thoughts?
Well, I think some 25 years ago, the US think tanks had projected China is going to be superpower by 2024. Now, situation and the all kind of economic indicators, that all indicates that by the end of this decade, in 2030, China would be the superpower. It's not going to be the US anymore. Donald Trump can say anything, but we have to see what is on the ground. What is a realistic picture? The realistic picture is that more and more countries are now joining BRICS. And if not collapse of the dollar, but certainly a massively weakening of the dollar is on the card. It is a matter of couple of years. Chinese currencies is going up. It is still traded in the world up to the 40%. And countries under the BRIC, and apart from there are smaller regional alliances where the regional economies are being integrated in their local currencies, not in the US dollar. Now, the Saudi oil is also being traded in the Chinese currency. So the dominance of the US dollar is not going to be there. And that would be a formal declaration of a US is shrinking itself back to the Atlantic Ocean. So again, China, the China factor, the question that you raise is extremely important. So what would be the policy dimension of the foreign policy dimension under President-elect Donald Trump? To begin with, so far as the political side is concerned, I think he may go for a typical rhetoric, but practically he has said it, that he's not much concerned of what is happening between Taiwan and China. China considered Taiwan its part, and China has been hurling threats time and again that it would formally make integrated Taiwan into the Chinese administration. It may happen sooner or later. USA under Donald Trump would not militarily intervene. Something the administration under Biden and the previous, they were threatening China that they would militarily intervene in case China attacks on Taiwan. I think on that point, China feels comfortable with the Donald Trump. But there are also a bigger irritants. And those irritants are that now under Donald Trump, under previous administration, he came up with ideas and he imposed heavy tariff onto the Chinese products, basically discouraging export, basically discouraging the Chinese products inside the USA. Reason being is that they want to promote their own industry. Particularly now, the EV industry is something which is being debated in the USA. China is the number one so far as the EV industry is concerned, these electronic vehicles. China is the number one country which, in terms of sophistication, in terms of the number and the quality of the vehicles, it has been manufacturing. And its price tag is not as high as those in Europe and in the USA. So therefore, now the trouble for the USA is that it has not been able so far, but certainly it would go in the future, to come up with a plan where it can manufacture electronic vehicles which are not very expensive and which are in terms of technology, it is also competing with those of Chinese. I think this protectionate approach towards economy is going to be there where under Donald Trump towards China. Now it means this free trade agreements that all countries in the world, most of the countries in the world, they were supposed to undertake. I think it is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. That is where China feels uncomfortable, because under his administration, like previous Biden also, there will be more tariff on the Chinese product, and that means that the focus is going to be on the on encouraging the indigenous industry in the USA. That is going to be his focus, and because he is bringing down all taxation onto the businessman. He wants to grow the economy. Because of American support to the Ukraine war, there have been high inflation in the USA. I think that has also played its part in bringing Donald Trump back to the power. We have to see that bigger picture, and that is about the Ukraine, because time and again, Donald Trump has said that he wants to end that war theater, which obviously means that he is going to suspend weapon supplies to the Ukraine. That does not bode well for the Europe, because Europe, like countries like France, Britain, Germany, they have been providing all kind of weaponry support to the Ukraine. And if the Americans are not there, that would come down very hard on the Ukraine military. And as a result of which, I think the Ukraine government would be forced, would be compelled to accept the terms and conditions that Russian President Putin would lay down. And my understanding is that probably Russia would be managing to retain that territory it has occupied, and would be probably managing to expel the Ukrainian forces from just a tiny part of the territory the Ukraine had occupied during last couple of months. So in a broader picture, Donald Trump's presidency means that there will be winding down most of the war theater where US is directly or indirectly engaged in. There will be more focus on the diplomacy, because he has been presenting himself as a deal maker. So he will have basically facilitate a deal between Ukraine and Russia on one side, but at the same time, I think it is also setback for the Europe, because Europe, together with the current administration in the USA, they were trying to basically dismember Russia and bring Ukraine into the fold of the NATO. It was essentially CIA's plot, which has backfired. It did not work, because in 2014, there was a change of government in the Ukraine, as there was previously a pro-Russian government. In 2014, it was changed, because there was behind the scene, it was a CIA, and a pro-Europe, pro-USA government was brought in. And that was the core reason because of which Russia was forced to carry out this what it calls as a military operation, but I think it's a full-scale war inside the Ukraine, and also Ukraine wanted to be into the fold of the NATO, and now the situation has changed. Ukraine probably would not be allowed to get into the NATO with Donald Trump as president. And this means that the so-called status of the US being a superpower, which it tried to project, which I believe is not the case, I think that status is going to be diminished. Donald Trump's focus is going to be hugely inside the USA. He is going to go after what many say against his political opponents, and something he has been saying, that he's going to prosecute them, because he said that he was victimized, he was convicted by a court on a sex scandal, and in a similar fashion there were also cases against him on concealing the tax. So again, we will see more turmoil inside the USA. We may see a mass deportation of immigrants from the USA to elsewhere in the world. And I think the minorities in the USA are going to face a very hard time. And now the fact Donald Trump has won the election is also because it is a revolt by the majority white Christian population. They didn't want to see any other black president. Previously, they had Obama. They didn't want Kamala Harris because she's another black president. And there was a feeling within the white supremacists, who are in majority, that these minorities are taking over, and it is a time to rise up. And against all these media projection that they were using the terminology that there is a thin razor lead, whosoever win, it will be very limited margin with which the winning candidates will make it happen. That did not happen. What we have seen, it is a landslide victory. Probably the Republican have also taken over the Senate. And Donald Trump is also claiming that the House of Representatives, they are also going to have it. And this looks like that this is a pent-up resentment within the majority Christian white supremacist, and that resentment is going to go down in a very negative manner in months to come. Donald Trump is a kind of a person who's known to be very impulsive. He will certainly go after what Kamala Harris said, his enemies. And by his enemies, I mean his political opponents. Basically it is the American medicine, they are going to taste it. Because in every third world countries, particularly in the Muslim countries, they launch conspiracies, they dislodge the government, they polarize the societies, and they divided the society. They supported every opposition party and the militaries to dislodge the elected governments. So now we will see that the Americans are, sooner or later, you will see they will be fighting with each other. And there would be more turmoil. And basically, as you sow, so shall you reap.
Javed Rana, thank you for joining A News, and thank you for your analysis. Now moving on.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geostrategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geostrategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.